Hello everyone, welcome back to my class, and in this video I will be talking about menstrual cycle. I am making a series on this ovarian cycle, and firstly I have discussed oogenesis. In second video I have talked about follicular development, and most probably it is my last video on this topic, that is the menstrual cycle. And you have so many queries on menstrual cycle because the diagrams you can see in the books are seems to be more complicated to so many type of students. So that's why I think why not I discuss this menstrual cycle, and so that you don't have such fear that this graph you have maybe seen in some books or PPTs that are available, but it's not a complicated diagram. That's why I am making it to to show you that you can also make it by yourself. Okay, so let's start menstrual cycle. And this menstrual cycle starts, and it's a 1 to 28 days cycle, right? We all know that 1 to 28 days of cycle. Basically it's a hormonal interplay. Okay, so what type of hormone interplay here? That is two pituitary hormones and two ovarian hormones. Two pituitary hormones are LH and FSH, and two ovarian hormones are estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone. So what they actually do, there is, you can see that there is a 1 to 28 days of period. Okay, and the magic begins here. So I have marked this 14 day by this straight black line, right? This black line, this is 14th day. So before this 14th day there is 13th day, there is 12th day, right? And so on. It's the first day. So this is the first day to 14th day, and 14 to 15, 16, like this way 28 days, right? So what happens that these LH and FSH, these two are the anterior pituitary hormones that are controlled by hypothalamus. Okay, so you can see that when there is 1 to 14 days, before reaching this 14 day, there is no peak of these hormones. These what are these lines denoting? This black line is for FSH hormone, that is the follicular stimulating hormone, and this red line, it's the LH hormone. Okay, that means the luteinizing hormone. So what happens? You can see that there is no surge or no peak of this FSH and LH before 14 day. So what happens in 14 day that we get a peak on red color on that day? Because this is the day of ovulation, and because and before this ovulation there occurs the maturation of Graafian follicle, remember? So that is the 13th day, and 13th day is the maturation day of all follicles. Which what type of follicles that are growing? Like primordial follicle, remember students? Primordial follicle to the primary level of follicle. Then there is this is the primary level of follicle where the granulosa cell layer becomes increased, and this is the first degree oocyte, right? And next there occurs the primordial, primary, and the secondary. And so on, secondary, and lastly they develop the tertiary follicle, which has the theca externa, theca interna, and there is second degree oocyte, zona pellucida layer, graphian granulosa cell layer, right? And this is named as graphian follicle. This is named as GF, that means graphian follicle. And this is the theca interna layer, right? Theca interna, that secretes estrogen hormones, right? So on the onset of 13th day, we get a peak of FSH hormone. We get a peak of FSH hormone. This is the FSH, because the follicle development is completed, graphian follicle is totally matured. Now there is a time to the second degree oocyte will comes out from the graphian follicle, it will leave the graphian follicle. So before the onset of 14th day, before the, and when the second degree oocyte comes out, that is called the ovulation. So before the ovulation, there must complete the graphian follicle development, so it is completed on the 13th day. That is why now there is no function of FSH hormone, because FSH hormone only responsible for the follicle development. So follicular development is complete on that stage. That's why we get a surge of FSH on 13th day. Remember or not? Clear? Okay. Next come to LH. So now these second degree oocyte comes out. So what happens on 14th day? That second degree oocyte comes out here. Second degree oocyte comes out with this granulosa cell layer and zona pellucida layer, and this zona pellucida layer. Okay, and it leaves the graphian follicle. So here is the follicle, it left. So here it's the graphian follicle, it's leave. So this is the 14th day, and on the onset of 14th day there is the act of luteinizing hormone. That's why we get LH hormone. Okay, peak level of LH hormone is found on the onset of ovulation, that is on the day of 14th. Okay, okay. And this graphian follicle is named as corpus hemorrhagicum. Corpus corp. So we have seen this release of these two anterior pituitary hormones. Next, these are the ovarian hormones. These are the ovarian hormones. So this magenta is the estrogen. Okay, and this blue color is for progesterone. So this blue color is for progesterone. So what happens when they will release? We will get the surge of estrogen for 2 times. One is before the onset of ovulation, that is why on the day of 13th to 14th day, that is why we get the estrogen peak level is here. And one is because these granulosa cells secretes estrogen hormones. We have said earlier, this granulosa and this theca interna, they secretes estrogen hormones. So estrogen peak will find before the onset of ovulation and some days after ovulation. That's why this peak is arrived. Okay, and this is the peak of progesterone, that blue line is not found before ovulation. See, there is no peak of progesterone till the date of 14th. After 14th day, progesterone level starts rising. Okay, why? Because progesterone helps for the development of the layer of endometrium layer. Okay, so on the day of 14 we get the peak of estrogen, little bit of estrogen and high progesterone level. Okay, so estrogen level and high progesterone level. High progesterone level and estrogen level also found. Okay, so and who produce this progesterone? See, after Graafian follicle, when this second degree oocyte leaves the Graafian follicle, it's become corpus hemorrhagicum, and it's a corpus hemorrhagicum means there occurs the blood clot, because we have seen that there is lots of blood vessels. When there is rupture of this Graafian follicle, so that blood will clot and it will form this corpus hemorrhagicum, and after some days it will appear as a cramped bag like structure. Okay, and that is corpus luteum. This corpus luteum will secrete progesterone and little amount of estrogen. High amount of progesterone and low level of estrogen. Okay, but there is, at that time, there is no FSH, no LH hormone released by the anterior pituitary. Okay, so what happens? See here, there is the layer of endometrium. This is the endometrium layer where you can see these blood vessels. Okay, this is the layer of blood vessels. So this is the layer of blood vessels that is very less during this time. This is the phase of 1 to 5 days. You see that at that time there is a shading of this endometrial wall. Endometrial layer becomes very thin during 1 to 5 days, but it becomes so high during 14 to 28 days. Right? Why? Because of progesterone. Progesterone proliferate and it helps proliferation of this endometrial wall, in this development of this endometrial wall. Okay, and as during 1 to 5 days there is no progesterone, because progesterone only released by corpus luteum. So you have to first develop Graafian follicle, then the secondary oocyte will release from that Graafian follicle, and then it will produce corpus luteum, and then there will be rise of progesterone hormone. So if there is no progesterone, so there is no endometrial layer, and this secondary oocyte which is released from this Graafian follicle, now it is waiting for sperm to fertilize it, right? So if anyone want to become parents, so that is the high time, because it's the after 14th days. So there already ovulation occurs. Now this ovum is now released and it is still waiting for sperm to fertilize it. So if there is sperm, so it will fertilize it and the baby will produce. So to keep this baby, we need a bed. So we have to prepare a bed on the mother's body. That's why this endometrial layer get very much thick, so that baby comes and sleep on that. Okay, but if there is no fertilization, that means you don't require this bed, right? So then at that time of after 28 days, what will happen? Again that one day will start. So that on that 1 to 5 days there will be the shedding of this thick endometrium layer, right? So that is the shedding, and this time is named as bleeding. Menstrual bleeding happens here because we know there is no need of this so much blood vessels, so we lose these blood vessels. That's why we bleed so much, and this is nothing but the shedding of this uterine wall. Okay, so it is the 1 to 5 days, and then after 5th to 14 days there is a time of folliculogenesis. So this 1 to 5 days, 1 to 5 days is for 1 to 5 days is for bleeding days, shading of the uterine wall, and this 5 to 14 is the follicular development, and 14 to 28, that is the period হচ্ছে after ovulation. Okay, is it clear to everyone? So there is the mostly two hormones, two anterior pituitary hormones and two ovarian hormones that interplay and that cause the menstrual cycle. It's super easy. So I would also like to show you this photo, this image that you will find on your book, any book that you follow. So you will see and it will super easy to understand. So see what happens. Firstly, there is a line of body temperature which is maintained from 37 degrees Celsius to 36 degrees Celsius. Okay, so what happens? This is the ovarian cycle. See, this is the ovarian cycle, where this is the growing stage of the follicle, right? So there is the growing stage, that is the primordial follicle, primary oocyte. Now you know it. This is the primary follicle, primordial, primary. This is also the first degree oocyte, and layer of granulosa cells increased. This is the secondary follicle, and it is also primary oocyte. So this is the primordial, next is the primary, and next is the secondary, right? And after secondary, this one is the tertiary, because there is antrum developed and it is the Graafian follicle. This is the tertiary, and this tertiary, this oocyte becomes second degree oocyte, right? So after that there is ovulation. See, this bag is empty and this ovum is released. Okay, then it becomes corpus luteum, and then it becomes corpus albicans. I will come to this point after that. So this is the anterior pituitary hormones, So see, firstly, this is the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. We will have the surge of follicle stimulating hormone on the day before 14 day, but here it is so showing that 14 day, but definitely you will get The correct one is the 13th day, because follicular development stops, then the ovulation starts. So you will see that FSH surge on 13th day, okay, on the onset of before the onset of ovulation. Next happens the luteinizing hormone, that is the LH surge, that will happen on 14th day. So this is the 14th day and you will have the LH surge. Next, what happens? The ovarian hormones. See, first you will get a peak of estradiol. This is the precursor of estrogen, okay, estradiol. And one thing, do you know, this estradiol is synthesized from cholesterol? Yes, because it's a steroid hormone, okay. So estradiol, and it is secreted by the granulosa cells and theca interna, okay, remember this fact. Next you will see that there is a slight peak of estrogen after 14th day, after ovulation, and this violet color is the progesterone. This one is the progesterone. You will get progesterone rise level in progesterone. Level become high during after the 14th days, okay. So here is the endometrial cycle, that is duration is 0 to 28 days, 0 to 14th days. From 0 to 5 days, this is a 5 day, 1 to 5 day, there is shading of this uterine wall, and this is the menstrual cycle. Then there is the development, that is the follicular phase, and then there is the ovulation, that is the luteal phase, okay. So this is, I think this graph is clear to you, and these hormonal interplays also I have tried to make it a very simpler version to you, so that you can understand it easily. So just check this video and write me that you get understand about the menstrual cycle or not, okay.